Dr. Dan here. Welcome back. So this is, I believe, week three. It is week three, and we are covering chapter 2 this week. And we're still right at that time, a little bit before 1900. Let's get into it because I want to go through the essay assignment that's due. It's not scary, but it's important that you understand the rules and exactly what you have to do. So watch through the rest of this video. I'll try to make it short, and we can look at that assignment. That having been said, you're wondering, Dan, Dr. Dan, why is there a picture of Encyclopedia Britannica over here with imperialism and political science popped up over there? There we go. And the reason is because I want you to know what imperialism is. All right. And so we're going to look at this real quick. So imperialism, this classic definition. All right. You don't have to write it down, just kind of know the gist of it. Okay. It's a state policy of extending power and dominion by territorial acquisition or by gaining control, political or economic control of other regions. So there's a whole bunch of classic examples of it, and we're going to talk about it. And this Britannica article is interesting. You can go to Britannica.com and look at it if you want to, but it's a good summary of what imperialism is. But just for layman's terms, for you and I, it means one country that has the means, maybe military, maybe economic means, to go in and take over another country, generally by force. Okay, either by planting a political stooge there or going in militarily and taking the land. And when we talk about imperialism in this period of history, which is this 1800s, 1900s, we're really talking about countries like England and Belgium, not so much the US because we were kind of in the midst of our civil war then, but going into countries like India, the classic example of taking over India in order to gain fabric or cotton and fibers and spices and all of that stuff that they could resell while exploiting the people. Okay, so that is what imperialism is. It's like taking over another area so you can have their stuff. And in this context of the Industrial Revolution, most of it was about getting raw materials to keep your industrial machine running. Okay, and that still happens today, where countries take over other countries to get their gold reserves or their oil, but not like it did in the 1800s, where there was absolute control. And so understand what imperialism is: big country taking over small country. But that's also important in the idea that there is this big historical trend happening. And if you remember back to the wonderful syllabus video, or I know you read the front page of your syllabus all the time, and we had these student learning outcomes, and one of them is we need to be able to identify and recall a major historical trend. Well, one of them is imperialism is sort of a trend that was happening in the 1800s, and also colonialism, and they're kind of the same thing for our purposes, where you go in and colonize another country and take it over and establish your own government and put your own schools in and that sort of thing. And this Western civilization period of time in the late 1800s, that's pretty typical of countries going in. Like you'll read about Belgium, for example, going into the Congo to get rubber and latex from rubber trees and that sort of thing. Portugal and Spain and all these countries are going into other places and getting raw materials to some extent at some point in time. And sometimes the commodity is even slavery in that era, or slaves. So imperialism is taking over other stuff. And that's that major historical trend that we're talking about. So that's why we're looking at this Britannica page. Now, let's get a little bit closer to home, and we're going to look at our chapter outline. I'm going to move myself there. We're going to look at our chapter outline down here, or our chapter notes. And just as you go through this chapter, which is chapter 2, and you think about imperialism and colonialism, you see this map, all right, in our text, in all those red areas, for example, are territories under British rule. So Britain, England, right? They came in and, took over everything in India that they possibly could, including the people. And it was, it was a bloody mess for a lot of people. And so that defines India. But that's the reason in a lot of big cities in India, there are English style laws and there's a lot of English speaking stuff and English style school systems, because that's how England set that up a long time ago. And so that's the classic example of imperialism. So this map tells you a lot more, because it also shows you some French enclaves and Portuguese enclaves. So other areas that other countries were taking over under the guise of imperialism. So the map is there. Check that out. And then just the bullet points from my reading notes, not necessarily your reading notes, is this definition of what imperialism is. And it's always the result of one group of people feeling superior over others, and always involves the exploitation of people, land, and resources. When you go through this chapter, you'll see a little thing from Kipling. And he writes about the white man's burden, that it is the duty of Western society to go into these backward societies and lift them up, make them better by industrializing them. Well, that's not really true. That's just one group of people, in this case these white English Europeans, forcing their ideas on another group of people that didn't necessarily want them, while exploiting everybody at the same time. So again, that's what happened. That's the history. That's what the primary sources tell us. So we talked about primary sources and what they are and why they're important in history. Well, in this case, we know about England taking over India because we have all the primary source material you want, from government records to firsthand accounts, so on and so forth. So that's how we know all that stuff really happened. So you read through it, you'll read about Cecil Rhodes, and you'll read about systematic racism that really starts in this period of time, as the Brits go into Africa. And again, we're still in the 1700s, 1800s, just kind of setting us up for what's to come. And this notion of social Darwinism is in here. That's this feeling that, hey, one society is superior to another, so therefore it's going to, they're going to take it over. Are there any modern examples of that? Not perfectly clean ones, but if you think about Russia and Ukraine right now, that's an example of Russia exerting control over another territory to take it over. I guess in a broad sense, it's an imperialistic move, but the primary motivation isn't necessarily raw materials. That's part of it for sure, as it is just control of that border region for the most part. But again, kind of get you in the realm of modernity and what's going on right now. So read through that. You'll read through Christianity. So another thing when we're talking about imperialism, not so much in this era. This era was more about industrial supplies, but imperialism also prior to this time, the earlier 1700s, was all about proselytizing and Christianity. So sending missionaries over to Christianize people. So much like the founding and colonization of North America, where we were here to help the Native Americans, make them better by Christianizing them to some extent. So again, that's what all this stuff is about. Understand that that's a trend. That's all I'm trying to get at. That in the 1700s, 1800s, and up into where we start our class, that this idea of imperialism is a major historical trend. So when I ask you at the end of the class, the final week, hey, what's a major historical trend? You can say imperialism was. And you can explain why and give an example of India, for example, okay? No big deal, kind of easy. So that sets us up for the week 3 assignment. I just pay very close attention to this. It's super easy. People freak out when they hear the word essay, and this is real easy. It's 3 questions, okay? But let me go through it and how to prepare for this. So make sure you do this on a Word document. If you're not using Word and you're using Pages or Google Docs or something like that, that's fine, but convert it to a PDF before you turn it in. Do not send me a live link, okay, to your Word document. I can't connect to your OneDrive, even if you give me all the permissions in the world, nor do I want to. So submit an actual document to me. Don't write in the assignment box. I can't grade it and annotate it that way. So first start a new document, and then there are 3 aspects or questions all right, to this assignment. The first one is write a minimum 1-paragraph essay or reflection describing a major historical trend illustrated by the notions of imperialism and colonialism in the 19th century. Your description should be plausible and make sense in the context of the reading. Okay, what am I asking you here? You can say, hey, Dan, you said imperialism was the trend. Well, it is, but there's a more of a, there's an overall, there's a meta. All right, there's a meta-analysis we need to do. And the trend is, I'll tell you right now, it's powerful countries taking over weaker countries. All right, you can spin it any way you want to. You can say it's because of racial superiority, military superiority, or none of those things. You can just say the trend is all of a sudden that imperialism, industrialization starts actually, and big countries start to take over little countries. Okay, that's the trend. So say it in a better way than that, but that's the answer right there. That's the trend. So do some research, write on it, but don't just say one sentence, Dan, this is the trend. Say this is a trend, and here's 2 specific instances of this happening in our chapter that show this trend actually happened. I would think one of them would be Britain and India. You just can't say that, though. You got to go to the book and say, Britain and India, look at this page. All right, I'll show you how to cite this with citations. Go to a certain page. This is where you're going to find that in the book. Don't turn into saying that's just, AI. Because if you can do, I want to know where it's at in the book, and you're going to fail. All right, because you're going to have to cite it. And if you don't cite it, you're going to get points off. So just don't be scared. This is super easy. Again, minimum 1 paragraph. Don't call me and say how many sentences should it be. It should be a paragraph, whatever you think. I don't know, 5, 6, 10, 12, whatever you need to write to get across the idea. Do not send me an epic novel that you did on AI. I don't care about 9 paragraphs of a deep dive into imperialism. That will not get you anywhere. Okay, that'll make me tired, and I'll be grouchy. So don't do that. Just do this. Sorry I'm such a stickler about this, but I've been doing this for a long time and people don't follow directions. So do that. Second aspect, write a short paragraph that answers the following. Okay, there's a section in chapter 2 called To Resist or Not Resist, and it's 2 primary sources. In this case, letters. I hope I don't have to tell you what primary sources are at this point, but 2 primary sources, and you don't really need to read those and exactly what they are or what they mean. But I do want you to look at them generally, overview, and write a 1 paragraph, or, it says essay. This can be a shorter one, but just a few sentences on what kind of sources are these. All right. So what kind of sources these are. And that's what we want to know. All right. Should I give you a hint? They're not secondary sources. So you can take it from there. Doesn't have to be an epic, just a couple of things that says, Dr. Dan, this To Resist or Not Resist, and these letters from Hong Kai and Fan Feng in the chapter are an example of this kind of historical source, and here is why. I'll leave it at that. Okay, aspect 3. Write a paragraph that answers the following. What does the statement, history is an argument based on sources, mean? Okay, and it's real easy. All you have to say is, that means that everything in history, everything that we read as historically reputable, comes from documents or primary sources. Okay, so history is an argument based on sources. Another way to word this is, history is stories, or are stories based on sources, based on reality. So write a little paragraph about that. Okay, no right or wrong answer, but you say, what does history is an argument based on sources mean? And you might say, well, it means that all historical narratives are based on actual evidence in the form of primary sources that proves whatever happened, but make it a little more elegant than that, okay? You don't use AI. Please, I'll know if you do, but if you want to use AI, tell me you used AI, and maybe I'll ask you some more specific questions. But make sure the writing is clean, but try to do it yourself the best you can. Again, not the end of the world. Just make sure you do these 3 things. And you can read back when you're done and say, did I do them? Now, Before I end, and I know this is going on forever, and I apologize, there's a rubric in the assignment. Grade yourself with the rubric before you turn it in. I cannot stress this enough. There's no reason for you to turn in a paper without citations, all right? Because the rubric tells you have to do this, all right? And you have all the time in the world. You have a week to do it. It's all comes out of the textbook. You don't have to go to the library or anything like that. So, so here's the rubric, and the first three things are those first three aspects. Like, did you do them? Did you identify the historical trend? Did you identify what kind of source type it was in the chapter as specified? Did you explain what the statement, history is an argument based on sources mean? That's the first three things in this rubric, and the points that you get for each one of them that shows you how they're weighted. Then there is this down here, articulation of response. What does that mean? It means that I can understand what you wrote, that you're articulate, all right? You make sense. It's a fancy word to say you make sense, okay? So I want to be able to read it and say, hey, this is what this guy's talking about, and not have it go all off wackadoodle in left field somewhere. So college level writing, use a tool like Grammarly. All right, it's free. There's student accounts. I love it. It just makes sure that your grammar is correct. I never really know where to put commas, and I've been writing for a long time. So do that. Finally, source acknowledgement. You got to cite your sources, and that's going to be in that aspect one for the most part, because that's where you're going to say, hey, here's this trend of powerful countries taking over weaker countries, and here's some examples from the book. And you're going to say Britain and India is one example, and then it's going to say Diker, page 31, like right here above this rubric, I show you right here. All right, here is Let's Beat the Bears, Diker 31. Here's a little example of all that has to look like. Just put the author's name, comma, and the page you got it from. Dr. Dan will do the rest. All right. And if you don't have page numbers because you're using an ebook or something, just put the chapter and the topic or something. We'll figure it out. But I want to know exactly where it came from so I can go back and look at it and make sure it's not AI writing it and you're writing it. Okay. That's it. That was a lot. Sorry, I ran out of breath. But that's it for the assignment. Don't freak out over it. Turn it in Blackboard. Don't be late. And if you have to be late, let me know ahead of time, so I'll be prepared for that. But we're going to be just fine. I usually get these graded in there's a lot of you in here, so it takes me 3-4 days to get through them all. But I'll grade them and get them back to you, and we'll be good to go. And it's worth a lot of points, so make sure you do great. I'm sure you will. If you have any questions, please call me or email me, daniel.french@utoledo.edu. I hope you have a great day and a safe week. Take care. Bye-bye.